Mitchell writes, sorry, Mitchell writes the Cutting Through newsletter at Substack and publishes a weekly column at wandaweiss.net. Mitchell's previous positions include vice president at the Foundation for Middle East Peace, director of the U.S. Office of B'Tselem, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, and co-director of Jewish Voice for Peace, where he currently serves on the board of directors. His writing has appeared in Haaretz, The New Republic, Responsible Statecraft, Middle East Eye, The New Arab, Middle East Report, Mondoweiss, The San Francisco Chronicle, Plus 972 Magazine, The Battleground, and other outlets. So thank you so much, Mitchell. We're so grateful to have you here.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here. First of all, I need to apologize. I'm still battling COVID-19, and occasionally I may have to mute myself and cough or something like that. I hope that won't be too distracting for folks. Also, just before I get started, I just want to make clear, as Alex mentioned, I am on the board of directors of Jewish Voice for Peace, and this is a JVP chapter event. But I want to be really clear that everything I say is in my own personal capacity and are not the views of JVP necessarily. If they are, it's coincidental. It's not. I'm not here speaking in any way on behalf of JVP, and nobody should take it that way. So that, I just want to make sure that everybody kind of gets that. Okay. So having said all that, welcome to the post-election sort of new dark period. The last year, I think, has not been very pleasant for anybody, and now the coming 4 years are going to be even less so. This was, in my view, and I imagine many, if not all of you, share it. This election presented as just a horrible dilemma in terms of the two major parties. I mean, we can talk about third parties, but in terms of the actual, practically what the race was, we were presented with a choice of voting for a fascist, narcissistic lunatic, and a woman with who has been a full partner in genocide and has just a massive amount of blood on her hands. This is just not the kind of choice. When that's your choice, that's not democracy. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. It's not really much of a choice for most of us. It was very, very difficult for a lot of people. I think there was a lot also that dynamic also created some acrimony among both Palestine solidarity activists and among progressives and leftists and liberals, and just a lot about how you approach that question. How do you deal with that kind of vote? And I actually hope now that the election's over, we can all start moving at least past that part of it, because it's going to be really necessary, whatever our next steps are going to be. And I'm going to talk about some at the end of my talk. But whatever our next steps are going to be, we're going to need as much people power as we can have to accomplish anything at all. So I think I want to start with what the outcome of the election means. There are ways in which things are going to change. There are ways in which things are already changing. And then there's other ways that things are staying the same. Today, I think we saw a really great example of how they're staying the same. The Biden administration, many of you may be aware, about a month ago, the Secretary of State and Defense, Antony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, respectively, sent a letter to then Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, demanding that Israel make certain changes and allow humanitarian aid in to Gaza. I think everybody kind of figured that if Israel said, sure, we'll do it, and then did nothing, there would be no consequences whatsoever. As much as that was expected, that happened today. Tony Blinken was very clear, saying, well, yeah, Israel didn't exactly make the grade, but we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, that literally is what he said, not in those exact words, but that was the message he communicated. Along with somehow we're pressing our Israeli partners to do more, blah, blah, blah. So we're seeing the same thing. So the post-election Biden is the same as the pre-election Biden. which again, I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone, but that is where we are. It is unclear uh, what uh, what the next couple of months will bring. There are some questions that we can that I will talk about in a little bit about what Trump's coming in might mean. Um, but for right now, we can deal with what we already know, and what we already know is based on who uh, Trump has already appointed. He's moved pretty quickly on the question of Israel and Palestine. If nothing else, he's already been appointing people with that issue very clearly in mind, even if they're not solely connected to it. For example, Elise Stefanik being named as the ambassador to the United Nations. To me, this is almost completely meaningless. In practice, she will be no different than Linda Thomas Greenfield has been. She will vote just the same way. She will undermine international order just the same way. She will just use different language, more hostile language in doing so. Um, Mike Huckabee will be the ambassador to Israel. Um, we saw that. So that is the clear influence of the evangelical Christian movement, as opposed to Trump's last ambassador to Israel, which was David Friedman, which was a Jewish settler. So these sorts of moves are things that really don't change a lot. Um, and we see when we look at some of, like, for example, Marco Rubio being nominated as Secretary of State. um, it was interesting to me that on the many of the news reports I saw, the first response to that was how he would deal with questions like Iran and Hamas and you know, the Middle East in general. Personally, for me, it raised the biggest alarm bells in terms of Latin America, Venezuela, even Mexico, considering the hostility that Trump displayed in his first term on those issues, and bringing Rubio in. That really worries me. On the Middle East, again, how different can he be from Blinken? There's not a lot that he would do in this role that he has ever advocated for that in practice the Biden administration hasn't already been doing. One thing I would kind of we should all be looking at very carefully is the nomination of Michael Waltz as the National Security Advisor. Um, if there is one thing I would have to admit about the Biden administration, and it has not really had any impact on the ground, but it does mean something in terms of strategy and planning, it's that they do understand that military force is not going to eradicate Hamas, is not going to eradicate Hezbollah. You know, these are movements. These are movements. These are ideas. You can't wipe them out with guns. They do know that. Waltz disagrees. Waltz believes that's exactly what you can do. Waltz was against leaving Afghanistan because he felt that mission could still be accomplished despite our poor performance there and the destruction that we left behind. So this man is somebody who really believes that problems can be solved with enough bullets. That is a little bit different, certainly, than a man like Lloyd Austin. Austin in this administration has been the voice that has constantly kind of reminded people that, you know, that military force is a tool, but it is not a cure-all. That is not going to be Michael Waltz's national security advisor. So that's something to take a look at. In general, Trump is relying on a man named Brian Hook to staff the State Department and bring in all the people who are going to set and carry out policy. Hook is an extreme hawk on Iran. He was part of Trump's first administration. So I think the idea that Donald Trump is preparing to sort of tone things down in the region, the people that are around him say otherwise. Brian Hook is certainly somebody who is a you know an extreme regime change advocate. So he is not somebody that I think we are likely to see turning the heat down. He is someone who would more likely turn the heat up. The one other announcement that came today was Trump appointing a man named Stephen Witkoff, who's not really a diplomat or political operative, as his Middle East peace envoy. Many of you may remember that in his first term, Trump had one of his lawyers, Jason Greenblatt, in that role. That's kind of who Witkoff is again. He's not somebody who's well versed in this stuff. He is a strong pro-Israel advocate and major donor. That's who he is. So I think Witkoff suggests that Trump still has his eyes on making some kind of deal here. One of the responses that we've seen over this past weekend happened at a summit in the region, where the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made very clear that that Israel cannot expect any more of these sorts of normalization agreements, and certainly not one with Saudi Arabia, without stopping what he himself called genocide. And that was very, very significant. We are seeing Saudi Arabia taking some very careful and considered steps right now, on a few different levels. We know Donald Trump likes to work with Saudi Arabia. We know that Donald Trump has a lot of business dealings with a number of Gulf countries, he and his family, and that is what primarily motivates Donald Trump as a president. That being said, the Saudis don't trust him. The Saudis don't trust him in a way they did not mistrust him when he came into office the first time. They know a used car salesman when they see one, but they were very, very disappointed when Trump was in office and their Iranian oil fields came under attack from Yemen, and Trump had been rattling his saber about how he was going to defend the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from all attack. And when the attack happened, he did nothing. And that changed a lot of Saudi Arabia's approach from that time until now, and that was more than 5 years ago. And right now, they are working very hard to establish much stronger relationship with Iran. That's where they see the opportunity to avert the regional war that the United States and Israel have been pushing the region towards. And they're right. The Iranians agree. And there will be a meeting. I think actually, I'm sorry, there was a meeting on Sunday between the chiefs of staff of both the Iranian and Saudi military in Tehran. So that is moving along, and it's moving along pretty briskly. And I think it's spurred on by the fact that they don't know what they're going to get out of Trump. Even if, even once he takes office and starts a certain program, he could turn on a dime, as we all know. So this is kind of the mess that we're looking at in the region right now. It is it's a grim picture in terms of Palestine, which I know is on first thing on everyone's mind, and in terms as well of Lebanon, and Israel's aggression in general. Trump has made it clear to Netanyahu that he wants this to stop by the time he takes office. What is unclear, or what at least he has not expressed, is that there will be any consequences for Netanyahu if he doesn't. And on the one hand, we know that Trump is much more childish and does not like being defied, and is unlikely to be the doormat that Joe Biden has been. On the other hand, Trump has a lot of reasons, particularly his evangelical base, to give Israel whatever it wants. And that's true not only from the political standpoint, but also from the strategic standpoint, because Trump very much wants to be able to work in a positive way with Israel, and needs also to maintain the windfall of cash that his friends in the weapons and tech industries have gotten over the past year from all of this aid that is going to Israel. You cut off that aid, that's a lot of money to American corporations that's been there for a year now, over and above the usual aid to Israel. that'll suddenly dry up. So it's not clear to me at all where this goes. Um, it's not clear to me at all how these different pressures are going to play out in the head of a man who is so unstable and so lacking in strategic thinking. I think it will land up where he sees his personal interests as lying, which in some ways makes him a bit more of a wild card than Biden, who we know is just not going to listen to reason on this. That is very, very clear. So if we want to look at that as a positive, I suppose we can, but obviously it is also a very dangerous situation as well, because the flip side of it is that Trump could escalate things militarily, not even knowing it, as he did in his first term when he encouraged the Saudis to start a blockade of Qatar, not realizing even what he was saying when he said it. And that caused tensions in the region for 3 years. So there's always that possibility with him, and it's a very scary time. The one thing, unfortunately, I think you can count on is that there aren't good outcomes on the horizon for the people of Gaza. I unfortunately, the Israelis have also created um, such a guarantee of that by passing a law that actually forbids them from dealing in any way or allowing in any way UNRWA to operate. They have crippled the ability to help the Palestinians who are in Gaza. So all of this talk about increased humanitarian aid and access and this and that, it's all theoretical. It all means nothing. There's no way to actually make those things work without UNRWA. So we are in a nightmare situation that has amazingly gotten worse uh, in a time when I think we all thought it can't get any worse than this. So um, I wish I could be a little more positive in terms of what we're seeing, but what I do think is important to take away from this election is that, in many ways we are here because we Americans, and to some extent we progressives, certainly a lot of American liberals, after the 2020 election, after the 2016 election, people kind of go home and sort of wait a couple of years. And they may energize around the congressional midterms, but really things come back about a year before the actual presidential election. We cannot afford to do that again. We need to make sure that in 2028, there is an option, there is an alternative, that we do not have to choose between fascism and genocide. We have to make sure that whether it's Democrats, I don't, if we can build a third party in some ways, whether the Greens or another one, what is important to me is that there is an alternative, whether that's within the Democratic Party or outside of it, a viable, real choice that people have that they can vote for that has a chance of winning um, in that next election. We cannot again find ourselves in a situation where we have to choose between fascism and genocide, where we have to choose between a climate denier who is literally putting the future of the entire planet at risk, who is running a campaign that is going to unleash lynch mobs against LGBTQ and non-binary our brothers, sisters, and siblings, um, and stacking that up against another candidate who supports genocide and is afraid to defend trans rights, even though, interestingly, one of Harris's greatest strengths in her record is trans rights, but she was afraid to even touch that issue on the campaign trail. We can't have a candidate who demonizes immigrants as if they were Republican, who hangs out with people like Liz and Dick Cheney. That is not a choice. That is not a way to pursue a different path from the one we have now locked ourselves into for the next 4 years. This can't be just about keeping our heads down and surviving, although that's going to be important too, because this administration is going to come after us. We need, if we're going to be of any use to the people in Gaza and the people in Jenin and the people in Lebanon, the people in Yemen, the people all over the Middle East that are suffering under our policies and the onslaught of the Israelis, we need to do something differently starting right now to change our government to one that can accommodate the sort of policies that are necessary, that are absolutely crucial to the survival of the planet and of the Middle East region. And I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you so much, Mitchell. I'm sure folks have plenty of questions coming in. For those just joining, you can add questions to the Slido that I'll share again. And we'll have time for a Q&A to ask Mitchell some questions after Khalid talks for a little bit. Khalid, are you okay to talk for now? I know
Yes, I
you
am.
have a very important city council meeting to give remarks at. So if you need to step away to give those remarks, just let us know.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, so let me just go ahead and introduce him then. So Khalid Turani is the executive director of CARE Ohio, overseeing operations in Columbus and Cincinnati offices. Turani brings more than 15 years of executive experience in public affairs and advocacy in Washington, D.C. and Europe. His tenure includes impactful engagements with Congress and the European Parliament, along with a decades-long tenure as CEO in the private sector. Beyond his professional roles, Khalid has been a community leader in the areas of voters' rights and coalition building around electoral politics and human rights. Born and raised in a refugee camp, his journey has been one of service, spanning humanitarian missions from addressing the Flint water crisis to aiding refugees in Gaza, Thailand, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. So we're very honored to have you here, Khalid. And yeah, without further ado.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this fine group of people. Being in this space is really an honor to me, and I appreciate the opportunity. Mitchell kind of said half of the things that I wanted to say, so I'm going to have to say only half of what I have to say. I think Mitchell brought up important points, like about Brian Hook, about the kind of people that Trump is appointing, which tells us that kind of gives us a glimpse of what is there to it's a preview of his presidency. But I wanted to go a step back. I think when the day after the election, I was in Washington, D.C. One of the major satellite channels, Al Jazeera, called me to come and comment on the elections, and there was this guy who is a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and he's a former Army general and just a person with a lot of credentials, but he's a Democrat. And when I start telling him that, the Democrats really need to have some introspection about what happened, he was telling me about what Trump said about immigrants and what Trump did and his policies. And I said, nobody's disagreeing, but where did the Democrats fail? And he'd go back and I said, you are a professor. I mean, if you do not have the capability of introspection, then I don't know what you're doing here. I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And I think that for people on the left, people in the center, the Democrats, you have got to have some introspection about why are we here? If somebody with Kamala Harris's credentials cannot beat a guy who have had some 90 convictions, somebody as much of a bozo as Donald Trump, then really you've got to rethink your entire strategy. To put some numbers on this, I will cite to you some very interesting and really hard-hitting stats or polling numbers. Going from before the Trump era, which is the presidential election, 2012, and comparing that to 2024. And what was done is looking at the numbers, the differential between those who would vote Republicans and those who would vote Democrat among different categories, several categories of people. And I think these numbers will be just as disturbing to you as they have been to me. From 2012 presidential election to 2024, under 30, it dropped from 23% to 11%, slashed in half. That is the differential between people who prefer to or would vote for a Democratic nominee versus those who would vote for a Republican nominee. 23 to 11. Income under 50,000 from 22% to 3%. No college. It was 4% to the advantage of the Democrats in 2012 to plus 14 to the Republicans. That is what is it? 18-point drop from Democrats going to Republicans. The other numbers that are disturbing, blacks from 87% to 72%. Going to someone like Donald Trump from 87 in 2012 to 72. The big drop, the big loss, Hispanic and Latino voters from 44% to 6%. And the last one is Asian Americans from 47 to 15%. A complete loss decline across the board from no college, under 30, income under 50,000, blacks, Hispanic, Latinos, Asians. When are the Democrats going to take a step back and think for themselves? And I think bringing Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney is like, oh, we have the Democrats in our back pocket, so now we're going to go and hunt for the Republicans who might be kind of in the middle, and maybe we can bring them. Well, you lost your core constituency, and now you're going to try to court the Liz Cheneys of the world. Good luck. So with that, now the loss has happened, and now we have new reality. What is that new reality going to mean? I mean, first of all, I think eventually what's going to happen, the American people will get like big slap on the face, and then they're going to wake up, and then we're going to find new coalitions coming together of different people from different folks from different strokes coming together to coalesce around facing off this kind of lunatic administration. Getting Steve Miller and Mike Huckabee, for God's sake, Mike Huckabee is the ambassador to Israel. Well, when an ambassador doesn't really do much on their own, they're part of an administration. But with that kind of combination of a Mike Huckabee type, with this kind of administration, you know things are going to go south, so to speak. I mean, I think that is somewhat of a racist statement, but things are going to go really, really worse when somebody like Mike Huckabee under this kind of administration. The same thing, a border czar under this kind of administration, you know things are going to go bad. Every EPA administrator under this kind of, I mean, you can bring an EPA administrator who's bad, but under an administration that is reasonable, they can be tamed. But bad ambassador to Israel under this administration, horrible. EPA administrator under this kind of administration, horrendous. And you can go through the rest of this administration. Stefanik for the United Nations. I mean, UNRWA can kiss itself goodbye for the next 4 years, because Stefanik is the biggest enemy of UNRWA. And Donald Trump is no friend of the United Nations. So not only UNRWA, I think other institutions. So I don't mean to be dealing with this as a grim reality, but guess what? It is a grim reality, and we've got to look at it as such. The only thing that might give me hope that things will not escalate into a World War III is that I believe genuinely that I believe that Trump genuinely does not like wars, and he wants an isolationist type of policy for the United States. But is he going to be able to stand up to the military-industrial complex lobbies and groups and money? I don't think he'll be able to, but I think his intentions, I think his belief, if he has any one belief, I think he believes that we should not be spending money on other country and other wars, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that might tame the tendency to escalate a wider war. And here I'm going to talk about Iran. Any attempt to drag Iran, I mean, Netanyahu tried. I mean, you got to give him credit. He really tried to drag Iran into a wider, larger confrontation. And I think the Biden administration, with all the things, you did not introduce me, by the way, Alex, that I am one of the founders of the Abandon Biden campaign, Abandon Harris campaign. And that is, you know, I don't think we brought Trump to the presidency, but I think the Democrats just refuse. They wanted to go with Liz Cheney, and they want to abandon everybody else who have voted for them over the years, who is saying stop the genocide, and they're just saying no, we're going to continue with the genocide. So anyway, but with the Iran policy or policies toward Iran, one thing about the Biden administration is they did not take the bait of getting them on the same side with Netanyahu on a larger scale war with Iran. And I think that was the intention of Netanyahu, because this is what he wants to do. I think Trump is going to do well on that front. I don't think he will get dragged into a confrontation with Iran, because if Iran is involved in this regional war now, I think China and Russia are just really kind of, you know, wringing their hands, getting ready, warming up for this kind of thing. Because if there is, I mean, Russia and China, I believe, would love nothing more than the U.S. to be involved in this kind of regional war, because China has its own aim on the South China Sea, and Russia wants some attention away from it, and wanted to get the U.S. muddied in a confrontation with Iran that would only weaken the U.S. and will strengthen Russia and China. I believe Iran said it, and I believe Iran would deliver on that promise. If Iran and its oil fields or its nuclear program is hit, it is going to hit the U.S. allies, because it believes that this is going to be, that they are complicit in the U.S. policy of targeting Iran. And I think the oil fields in the Gulf region are going to be targeted. And I think U.S. allies in the Gulf are going to be targeted. And I think that is going to be bad for everybody around. So I think the biggest issue is Iran and Iran's involvement. I think the U.S. can tolerate Iran working through proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and some of the Iraqi factions. That is tolerable. But an Iran direct involvement, which means an Israeli response, that is just not going to be good for anybody. When it comes to the Arab regimes, I think the Arab regimes are, and that is maybe a point of disagreement with Mitchell. I don't think Saudi Arabia can be upset with the U.S., cannot afford to even be upset with the U.S. And the proof is that on January 6th, the day before, I think, or the day after, I'm not sure about the date, Jared Kushner came back to the US. I mean, he flew right before on a commercial flight, not on an official visit, went and met with the Mohammed bin Salman and came back, and a couple months later, he got him what? $2 billion. The Saudi Arabia spent on the crisis with Qatar, and during that period for Khashoggi, and after the murder of Khashoggi, spent $25 million on lobbying, on PR firms in Washington, D.C., $25 million. And they spent $2 billion just for the beautiful eyes of Jared Kushner. And this is after Donald Trump lost the presidency. They gave that money. So they can't afford to be to even be upset or to be offended by Donald Trump and his crew. So I believe they will give him whatever he wants, and he is going to do very, very well with Saudi Arabia. I agree with the point that there's going to be a floodgate of money coming from Saudi Arabia. The thing about the Arab regimes, whether it is Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, or Egypt, is that I believe they're going to be emboldened as Arab dictatorships in exchange for normalizing with Israel, and they'll do whatever the United States wants them to do and whatever Israel wants them to do, and what this administration rather, and this administration is going to go to an extreme in terms of getting these Arab regimes to be emboldened into supporting normalization and the new Middle East at the end of this war in Lebanon and Gaza. The danger, I think, of this administration is not only that Donald Trump learned his lesson from the first run in the presidency, the first 4 years, first term. Did he only learn his lesson that he can bring strong men and women to be with him in the administration, but then those strong men and women are going to be strong. And when they disagree with them, they're going to let them know that they disagree with them. Because of that, they start dropping those 4-star generals and these big shots from the military that he brought in, whether chief of staff or national security council and any of these big important positions. He learned that those people he can't deal with. So what did he do? He learned his lesson that he needs to bring loyalists. But the problem is that the loyalists that were with him, like the Steve Miller and the Steve Bannon and the Brian Hooks and all of those people, the problem is they also learn their lesson on how to manage Donald Trump. And whatever they could not accomplish in the first term, they're going to accomplish in the second term. And I think this is very dangerous. He appointed 240 some judges last time around, 3 of them on the Supreme Court. I think this time he's going to do more of that in a more efficient way. I think there's going to be purging of many federal employees and technocrats. Maybe that's not a bad thing necessarily, but coming from Donald Trump is definitely going to be bad. Brian Hook being in charge of hiring the 3,000 to 4,000 direct hirees by the White House, I think this is going to be extremely dangerous because Brian Hook is a very dangerous man. I will close with this, and I will be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Khalid. Really insightful. So hopefully you all have seen this link that I've sent, the Slido questions. If you go into that link, you can also look at the questions and like them if you really want one to get asked, but just given so many people in the session, I want to sort through these questions. Why don't we start with...
If I may, Alex, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to excuse myself in about literally 16 minutes.
Okay, no problem. So let's make sure we get some questions for Khalid specifically.
And I really apologize for this, you guys. We completely forgot that there was this hearing that has been scheduled, and I'm supposed to give a testimony. And yeah, so.
It's important. We are all busy doing the work. So let's start with why, maybe Khalid, for you specifically, why did Arab and Muslim Americans in Michigan vote for and endorse Trump?
Okay, about 42%, 47%, maybe just 40 some percent of Arab Americans in Dearborn voted for Trump. There was an endorsement from some of these of the organizations and the communities, particularly in the Yemeni community. I can't look at it without looking at what happened in 2020 when 80%, 8 out of 10 Arab Americans voted for Joe Biden and it was in response to a Trump presidency. So we voted for Biden. Now, for them to lose from 88% to just, I think it was 11 or 12% who voted for Harris this time, I think it is the Democrats will need to be asked that question. But why do I believe they did? Donald Trump, I mean, while Kamala Harris brought us to Michigan, Liz Cheney, Liz Cheney to talk about to court the Arab American vote or to court voters, bringing Liz Cheney to Michigan, and then she brought Bill Clinton, who told the Arab Americans, he said, I understand that people think too many people died in Gaza. Like I said, which side is he on? It looks like he was paid by Trump to come and screw Kamala Harris. And when Clinton came out, and I put out a video about his speech, and Liz Cheney came out, and then Kamala Harris would come to our community, and when somebody say stop the genocide, she say I'm speaking. Say, okay, well, you're not speaking anymore. So I think that the arrogance that the Democratic Party have dealt with the Arab American community, the same type of arrogance that Hillary Clinton dealt with it in 2016, when I mean, she lost Michigan by 10,000 votes. We tried to send a message in March when 104,000 Arab Americans and progressives voted uncommitted, which was 13.2% in a primary that was non-contested by anybody against Joe Biden, and still you got 13.2% to vote against you. You got 18.8 to vote against you or uncommitted in Minnesota. 57,000 people voted uncommitted in Georgia, and you still wanted to continue to support the genocide. Well, I think it was the election. I mean, nobody owes the Democrats or anybody their vote. You have to earn our vote, and you just did not earn it. So I think the endorsement of Trump came from a small number, but that translated into large number of voters who voted for Trump. Trump, I think, played it right. He went first Republican presidential candidate to ever go to Dearborn. He went to Hamtramck 3 times. Hamtramck, by the way, is the first city, for those who do not know, is the first city in America where the entire city council and the mayor are Muslims. First city in America ever. So he went 3 times to Hamtramck. He went and he met with the mayor. The mayor is a friend of mine. He's a Democrat. Ghalib, Amir Ghalib is a Democrat, and he's an immigrant, and he's naive also. But Trump went and met with him 3, 4 times, whatever, and so that's what happened.
Okay, thank you. Mitchell, did you want to add anything or answer the question, or Move to another. Okay. So let's start with, this will be for both of you. Mitchell, you talked a bit about climate change. Wondering if you think the Green Party is a viable political venue for the US left. If not, is there an alternative electoral strategy, or where should we be focusing our efforts?
Well, you go to my Substack, you will see I wrote a piece of that was pretty critical of the Green Party. I don't have a lot of faith in the Green Party. I certainly do not have a lot of faith in Jill Stein. This is not about their political positions. Their political positions are fine. If we could find it, it is about their political strategy on many levels. I think they showed a distinct lack of vision this year, which is nothing new for them. They wanted, for example, my friend and the noted human rights lawyer Noura Erakat to run as vice president with Jill Stein, and she had conditions. She wanted them to say that if the Democrats would commit to an arms embargo, that they would drop their campaign. I think that's a pretty reasonable ask for a party that has no shot of winning. They refused, and to me, that is one can agree or disagree with any given decision, but for me, that was also very part and parcel of their general lack of strategy, which is they have been running these, presidential campaigns, the senatorial campaigns. They run smaller campaigns as well, but that's not where their resources are devoted to. And they need to build what needs to happen. If you want a third party, it takes time, and it takes building from the ground up. It takes building through city council elections, through school board elections, through other county official elections, up to House elections, and then to Senate elections, and then hopefully you're a legitimate presidential contender. You have to do that work. The Green Party has never wanted to do that work. They've pursued the same strategy for decades. It's not grown the party. So I don't particularly have any faith in that party. That's my opinion. Your opinion may differ. What I think is important going forward is for us to have these conversations and for people to gravitate. If you believe the Green Party is going to be, it can be a viable party, join the Green Party. Go and help build it. Do that. I absolutely encourage that. If you believe that there's another, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Working Families Party, if you believe any of these parties can become that viable third party that can really start to influence policy and elections, great, go build that party. You want to do another one. You want to work within the Democratic Party because you think you can change that. Great, go do that. I think we need to pursue all of these, because if we each pursue the one we think is effective over not too late a period of time, some will emerge as viable, some will emerge as, well, that didn't work, and those people will gravitate to something else, and we will find our solution. It would, we're all in this, we do this on the left all the time. We're in emergency mode, and of course there's good reason. We look at Gaza, we see what's happening in Lebanon. This has to change now, but we don't have the power to do it. And the reason we don't have the power to do it is that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we said the same thing. We have to do it now. It doesn't work that way. That's not how parties are built. It's not how politics works. Okay, you have to do the work, and the work takes time and commitment. And that's why I'm saying we need to start right now, and we need to not worry. If, as I say, you ask me, am I going to go help build the Green Party? No, because I don't believe that's what's going to work. But I don't know. I could be wrong. And I hope that if I am wrong, that all of you people who disagree with me right now, go and build the Green Party. Go prove me wrong. Anything that works will be great. So let's do that. But what we can't do is continue to fight among ourselves about, no, you should have voted Jill Stein. No, you should have voted for Kamala Harris because Trump's so terrible. Those fights do us no good. Okay. And trying to convince each other, we don't know for sure what's going to work. I know what I believe. You know what you're going to believe. We should all be pursuing
that. Very well said. The only thing I would add is I think we still need to have a much broader discussion One about the duopoly of the Republicans and the Democrats and their grip hold on politics in America. I think this big shift from the Democratic Party more towards the Republican Party, especially under somebody like Trump, is mind-boggling to me, and I can't explain it. But I think definitely there have got to be a much broader conversation, and it's not only about the Green Party or the People's Party. My good friend Cornel West, unfortunately, he wasn't on many platforms, and I asked him. I said, "Would you join forces with the Green Party?" And he said he wouldn't. Tried to talk to Jill Stein about it. That did not pan out. But I think trying to break the duopoly is a must. Having a broader conversation, what is going on with this society is I think bigger concern than only the environment. The environment definitely is a top tier worry and concern for all of us, should be at least. But I think the bigger policy is, where are we going as a country?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we have some more questions. If anyone's having technical difficulties with the Slido, you can raise your hand on Zoom and I'll try to get to you as well. Okay, so Trump has told Netanyahu that he wanted him to finish the job in Gaza. What do you think that means? That's the question from the audience. And we can start with you, Khalid. Yeah.
It means finish the job. It means what other members, Republican members of Congress said, kill them all. Like somebody said, drop a nuclear bomb. You know, we love to drop nuclear bombs on people, and we think that solves the problem. It's very unfortunate. I think what it means is what it said. It says finish the job quickly. That means use more force, kill more people, and just do what you got to do. You know, but what Trump said, and he verbalized, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did in reality. And when people were asking me, you know, I'm definitely no fan of Donald Trump. Just the fact that we did say abandon Biden, abandon Harris, that definitely was not an endorsement of Trump. But when people would say that, are you not concerned that Trump is going to be worse? And the question I always have and ask people, and no one really has answered me, say, like, what can, or what Joe Biden has not done or given the Israelis that Donald Trump can give them? Joe Biden gave him 3 or 4 veto votes in the Security Council, shielded them politically, diplomatically, legally. We attacked the ICC and the ICJ for the eyes of the Netanyahu government and the Israeli government. We gave him an air bridge of just constant. I mean, the amount of CO2 that was spewed into the atmosphere was just unbelievable because of these airplanes that were flying, ferrying bombs to the Israelis. What the Israelis did to the environment, other than to the humans, to the trees, to the buildings, to the women, to the children, just unbelievable. And this was done all under Joe Biden. And so I'm not sure what can Trump give Netanyahu that has not been given by the Biden administration. 7 out of 10 bombs that were dropped on Gaza were given by the, courtesy of the U.S. taxpayers.
So the only thing I would add, I do think the one thing that Trump would, based especially on his first term, do differently than Biden is, Trump made a very big deal in his first term that he was not going to dictate to other countries about human rights, be it Israel, be it Egypt, be it whoever, be it Russia. And he stuck to that. He that was non-issue for him. You could violate all the human rights you want, So there was a point to which Israel, at the beginning, we know what Yoav Galan said about no water, no food, no electricity, no medicine into Gaza, kill all of the human animals and the whole thing. There was a response to that from the United States, where you have to let humanitarian aid in, you have to at least allow this sort of stuff to function. And the one thing that could change is that Trump might be more tolerant of completely cutting that off, which is only a slight difference, I agree, from where Biden is right now, because it's mostly cut off. And so Trump may be willing to see it go to, yes, just go starve them all and let's get this over with now. And because he in a certain sense is just the same kind of monster, in some ways more intense even than Biden. So that's the one thing that could change. But other than that, I basically agree with Khalid. There isn't much that Trump can possibly do that Biden hasn't already been doing.
Well, if I may, I think Shamsi said, answered my question and yours as well, Mitchell, is that Trump gave Israel the Golan Heights and now he'll give them the West Bank. He gave them Jerusalem. Does that mean Jerusalem is no longer Palestinian? I don't believe that. And the Golan Heights, well, Israel have had the Golan Heights since 1967. Is Trump's stamp of approval is going to make the people of Majd al-Shams, that the Druze village in the Golan Heights, are they gonna say, okay, Trump gave it to the Israelis, so now we're gonna have to take the Israeli ID? Until today, after however many, 55 some years, 57 years, the people of Majd al-Shams still refuse to accept or to take the Israeli ID. And if he gives them the West Bank, well, the Israelis have increased the number of settlements probably by 10x or 7x since Oslo, since 1993. The number of settlements have increased by a similar number since Oslo was signed. The number of as you know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. That the number of checkpoints in the West Bank went up to like 600. The apartheid wall around the West Bank. All of that is happening without a stamp of approval from Trump or any other administration. So I think that kind of token giving or allowing or recognizing Israeli annexation of the West Bank, you know what? The Palestinian people are continuing to be in historic Palestine right now. I believe after the October 7th, I believe that the number of Palestinians have gone up to where now Palestinians are actually a majority. The differential right around October 7th was 0.2% to the Israeli advantage, where there were more Jews than Palestinians by 0.2%. I believe that number right now has really tipped to the favor of the Palestinians. And so if Trump gives them the West Bank and give them Gaza and Jerusalem and the Golan Heights, are the Israelis going to continue to sustain themselves being a minority ruling a majority? Good luck doing that, because short of killing every Palestinian in Palestine, guess what? As long as there's going to be apartheid, there's going to be resistance. It'll take different forms. It will dip up and down, but eventually the people are going to rise up for their freedom. With that, I'm going to have to excuse myself, and my apologies. I really am sorry that I have to leave you. Just very interesting group, and I would have loved to continue, but hopefully there'll be another opportunity to come back and talk and maybe have a more lively discussion.
Yes,
Mitchell, it's a pleasure to meet you even through Zoom.
too.
And Alex, thank you so much. And for everybody, I appreciate you excusing me for leaving here early.
Thank you very much, Khalid.
Best of luck, Khalid.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Mitchell, are you up for fielding?
Absolutely.
Okay, a few more
Bring them
questions.
at me.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, so here's one. Don't you see Saudis as shifting alliance to China and US-China rivalry as the main dynamic in the world leading to eventual world war?
that's a big leap in my mind. For one thing, I don't see Saudi Arabia doing things that will destabilize. They are more than anyone interested in stability in the region. Their concern is to make sure that what they want right now more than anything else is to make sure that this war that Israel is trying to provoke with Iran does not happen. That's what they want. Beyond that, in the broader strategic sense, they are not at all interested in abandoning the idea that they provide the West with oil and the United States and its allies provide them with quote unquote security. That arrangement, that post World War II arrangement, is one they still want to keep going. They simply don't have the confidence in it that they once did, and they're trying to hedge their bets. There's a number of reasons for this, including the shifting, every 4 years, changing American administrations and those policies, but also the fact, at what I said before about their loss of trust in Trump, but also with Biden. Biden came in, and of course, Biden has given the Saudis every single thing they could possibly ever dream of since he's been in here, and has tried to give them even more. And it's only been Israeli stubbornness that has prevented the normalization agreement that he's been trying to get for them. But Biden also did come into office, it seems like forever ago, but when he was campaigning, it was, the Saudis are evil and the human rights abusers and murderers and all of this. And, MBS is a pariah, and then he's fist bumping him. So they don't, for them, everything is going back and forth. And so they're not trying to move away from the US and into the good graces of China. They're trying to be on good relations with both, which is sensible. Incidentally, Israel does the same thing. Israel also tries to be on good relations with China. It's gotten into, it's a little bit different now, obviously, because of the situation, but over the years, it's gotten into arguments, or you could call them diplomatic conflicts, even with the United States over its relationship with China. So, this is not uncommon. It's not, this isn't, for most of the rest of the world, this isn't an either or. We tend to see it that way. In fact, China doesn't tend to see it that way. Russia does, but China is really the big boy in this schoolyard scrum. And I mean, that vision is not really one that I share. That being said, I do think there are real dangers that things can spiral out of control. We have, we're talking about a potential war between Israel and Iran. Iran is cementing its relationship with Russia and helping Russia in its war with Ukraine. That is something that China looks at very carefully. China is generally not disposed to getting directly involved in any of this stuff, but it has to also think about its alliance with Russia. The question of world war, I think, is that's where the real possibility in my mind is, the potential convergence of the Israel-Iran conflict and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And they are actually kind of moving a bit closer together. It's long term, but if both of these things go on long term, I do think that's a risk. I actually think what mitigates that risk is the growth of the BRICS alliance, because it is going to create a situation where it is not going to be in the U.S.'s interest to continue this path of belligerence with so much of the world once BRICS comes together in a more formal economic union, and that already is capable of rivaling the United States. So, I mean, when we're thinking that big a picture, I'm less worried in the immediate term. I do see a possibility of these two conflicts coming together to turn into something really awful. And of course, either Ukraine or Israel, Iran could conceivably trigger World War III, depending on, dropping the wrong bomb in the wrong place. Those are all risks and all the reasons that we're all working for peace. But I don't see that doomsday scenario that you described in terms of Saudi Arabia really unfolding. They are doing everything they can to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Okay, so you already touched on this with your last question with a couple questions ago, but I keep getting upvotes for this one. So what should we be doing to start organizing so that we have a more viable candidate in 2028?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of different paths. I am a big believer in the idea that there's enough people who want change that we can all do the things we feel are the right things, and we don't need to fight each other. Say we all need to be on this one path. I believe that if we allow each other to pursue different paths over, again, not too long a period of time, the best strategy will present itself. And it won't necessarily convince everyone, but it'll convince a critical mass, and we'll pursue that. So, you know, that could be the Green Party, it could be the Democratic Party, it could be building an entirely new party. Um, all of those things. What I think is important is, you know, we saw in this election, right, the question of Palestine and the question of Gaza became a significant electoral issue. It was clearly a factor in starting the momentum going that forced Biden to resign. It wasn't the reason by any means, but it was a factor in getting that momentum going. It was also a factor in Harris's loss. I think Khalid was absolutely spot on when he noted how and folks can go to Mondo Weiss and see my article from last week where I talk about this. When Harris said, "I'm speaking," I think that encapsulated so much of how condescending she was to voters, how dismissive she was of voters' concerned, and how frankly, you know, how high an opinion she had of herself as opposed to all the people whose votes she needed. I think that was a very alienating thing to do. Now, you know, at the time, at the moment, you saw it. It maybe people didn't see it that way because she did it in front of a crowd who were all her loyalists, so they all cheered it. But I think people, you know, other people did not respond so positively. So you know, but all of this came too late. All of this started a year ago, and it needed to start long before that. It needed to start as soon as Biden won in 2020. We needed to say, hey, okay, because what was the big selling point of Biden? He's not Trump. He's the guy that can beat Trump. Many of us, I think certainly many progressives and even many liberals were not satisfied with Biden on a policy level 4 years ago, but they said we got to get Trump out. But then when the next day happened, they didn't organize to say, okay, now let's get somebody who does reflect the sort of policies we want. Look, climate change is an issue. People want to see that. People want to see that addressed. The majority of people want to see that addressed. The majority of people want to see the minimum wage raised to at least $15, mostly $17, and some even, you know, significant numbers even more. People want to see, paid family leave. These are not radical concepts. These are things that happen all over the Western world, except here. So this shouldn't be that difficult. The fact of the matter is, when you look at what the Democratic Party is supposed to be, based on its constituents, right? It would, if it was what it was supposed to be, it would never lose a national election, never, and it would win most of the Senate and most of the House every single time. Republicans wouldn't have a chance, okay? Because and we know this because if you look at polls and see what policies people want, they want all of these progressive policies that Republicans by definition can't support, but Democrats can. Republicans can, when they're smart, like, and let's face it, you know, Trump is a savant on this. He knows how to read the room, and Democrats don't. Trump reads the room. So he goes to McDonald's, and everyone on NBC laughs at him and says what a scam it is and how phony it all looks. And that's all true. And it doesn't matter, because what happens is working people say, yeah, we know it's a scam, but he's reaching out to us. He's appealing to us. What's Kamala Harris doing? She's telling us we've got it great. Why are we complaining? So, that is the stuff we have to be attacking right now. And we have to be saying that is unacceptable. Okay. And there's a whole host of different ways to do it, but we have to start doing it now. One thing that I've been hearing a lot of, and that just makes me When the term here is, everybody says, okay, well, just take it easy for the next couple of months. No, as soon, yes, we are all upset that Trump won, and we may need a minute to catch our breath. But as soon as that breath is caught, we have got to get to work, or it's all going to happen again. Because a year into the election, this stuff can't change. We can't change it that late. We have to change it earlier in the election cycle, and that's now.
Appreciate that call to action, Mitchell. And I'll just do maybe a couple more questions. We know you're recovering, so don't want to put you through too much, but let's see. So wondering if European countries have any sort of moderating effect on Israel. Will European countries have any sort of moderating effect on Israel?
See what just happened in Amsterdam? I think that's your answer. We just saw how European countries react to Israel. Amsterdam is not Hungary, and yet a bunch of Israeli hooligans go there, start harassing citizens, and they're the ones that are being protected by the police. It's sort of like being in Hebron, isn't it? Right? You go, Baruch Goldstein goes and it goes into the Abraham Mosque, shoots 29 Palestinians dead, and it's the Palestinians that are then put under lockdown, not the Israeli settlers. Same thing, just on a smaller scale. Thankfully, it just happened in Amsterdam. There's a number of different ways to look at this, and a number of different factors here. A big one, of course, is the massive we think we've got the xenophobia with immigrants issues here. I mean, throughout Europe, it is epidemic. That's a big thing, and certainly in the Netherlands with Geert Wilders, that makes it, there's a clear leader for all of that, and they turn this all into a sort of hateful philo-Semitism, where they're scaring Jews. The response from the Dutch Jewish community has been they've been scared. That this whole thing scared them. They were told that there was a Jew hunt going on the one hand. On the other hand, they're looking at these Israelis saying, what the hell are you people doing coming into my country and behaving like this? You might have noticed that Dutch Jews were not supporting any of this stuff. So there is, and that's the Netherlands. We start talking about Germany, forget it, right? I mean, Germany is, you can't wave a Palestinian flag in Germany without being arrested. You can't hold an event on Palestine without it being shut down by the police, or without your guests that are coming in being stopped at the airport. We're entering a phase here where we're seeing it in the United States on the universities and other campuses, but we're entering a phase in general where there's just a complete clampdown on any support for Palestine. And the reason is because that's the only way you can actually defend Israel. There's no real defense for Israel and their policies other than doing that. So do I see Europe doing anything? No. We also saw recently, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. It was some initiative, I believe it was in Ireland, that was set to pass, that was supporting Palestine in some way. I think it was a mild boycott. And the United States basically told their diplomats, you better not do this or there will be consequences. So there's that. If a European country does try and take action, the United States will threaten it with consequences. And that there's a whole range of things that they can do, which is, to make trade more difficult, or even just to denounce it publicly, which is going to be bad enough. Their own conservative groups are going to then jump on them. To me, there's no hope from Europe. There really isn't, again, unless people make things different there. Same thing as here. It's going to be about the people changing the governments. The governments are not going to do anything really useful.
Oops. I was muted. Okay, so another question and then we'll close. So AIPAC has played a major contributor for Israel. Can it be categorized as a foreign agent?
Sure, it should be. It is a foreign agent. That is something that a lot of people have pursued for many, many years. APAC is the whole question of foreign agent registration and sort of nonprofit status and how you do all of these things and all of these sort of technical um bureaucratic issues. They're if you know what you're doing, they're not hard to get around. Now, is APAC an agent of a foreign government? I would suggest yes. However, everybody who works for APAC is American. Everybody on APAC's board is American. So their contention, and you are, as an American organization, you are certainly allowed to advocate for the interests of another country. And there's always the question of where that line gets drawn. Can you advocate, for example, APAC has always been very careful not to advocate for or in any way enable people to violate American policy. Israel does it all the time, but APAC stays away from actually enabling that, even though, but they'll do everything they can to change US policy. That you can do. So there's ways that APAC has been able to sort of skirt these rules, but the truth is they skirt it because nobody wants to call them a foreign agent. Nobody wants to deal with the controversy that will create. If they were serious, yes, they would be labeled a foreign agent. So there's no quick, I don't believe there's a quick road to confronting APAC, but I would say APAC is in trouble without that. Look at this election. I think this election actually showed you just how much APAC's power is waning. It's not getting stronger. It's waning. Yeah, they knocked out Jamal Bowman. They knocked out Cori Bush. They spent a fortune to do that, an absolute fortune, even by their standards. They've always pumped money into certain key congressional races, but never on this scale. They spent an enormous amount of money to knock out two members of Congress who were already vulnerable. Let's remember, they didn't go after, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They didn't go after Rashida Tlaib either. They didn't go after Ilhan Omar. Why? Because they were going to lose if they tried. They were not going to be able to get them out. So I see somebody just put in APAC candidates won every race they ran. That's true. There's a reason for that. That they don't back people they don't think are going to win in the first place. That's how you do this. I've been around Washington a long time. I've been around campaigns, and I've been around a lot of these sort of advocacy organizations. That's what you do. You decide who's going to win before you go out and endorse them. That's how you make those kinds of claims. They have frequently actually abandoned people who they've supported in the past because they knew they were going to lose. So there's that. That's you look at Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. You see how much it took to knock them out, even though these were two very vulnerable members of Congress. For a number of other reasons that had nothing to do with Israel, and some that did have to do with Israel. So that's that. Also, if you look at the election, the presidential election, the Harris-Trump race, APAC wasn't particularly visible here. And they gave money to both sides, as they always do. But there wasn't a lot going on there. There wasn't a lot of pressure. When Harris refused to allow a Palestinian speaker at the DNC, APAC wasn't pushing her to do that. She did that on her own. She didn't need, yes. And had APAC decided to oppose that, it wouldn't have been a big deal. She could have done it anyway. APAC might have said something about it. They would have moved on. It wouldn't have been that big a deal. APAC is not the superpower that people seem to think it is. In fact, it is this mystique around APAC that gives it half its power. It is an effective lobbying organization. It certainly it's a very well-resourced organization, although when you talk about campaign financing, it is nowhere near some of the real big movers and shakers. I mean, we're talking about, not even on the list of the big campaign sectors. Pro-Israel just doesn't make that list. So there's a lot of ways what APAC does is what you saw them do here. They concentrate a lot of their resources on a couple of races, and you don't want to draw that attention because they'll send into a local congressional race an overwhelming amount of money in advertising, and they will create their own ads that have nothing whatsoever to do with Israel because they're trying to knock out the candidate. So they're very good at what they do. There's no question about that. And they are one of the most effective lobbying organizations in Washington, but they're not nearly as influential as they used to be, partially because they actually have to deal with direct financing of campaigns now, which they didn't do before, partially because people know of them. You know, you bring groups like AIPAC into the light, it's not good for them. And mostly because they're trying to sell a product that really isn't very popular. We saw that as well. If you take a look, just yesterday, there was the Jewish Federations held a pro-Israel rally in DC at National Stadium, you know, the ballpark, you know, where you have not only the seats that hold whatever it is, 35,000 people, you also then have the field is open too. And you can fill that with tens of thousands of people. They got 2,000 people there. 2,000. They thought they were going to get 40. We are talking about Israel is a tough sell. People don't like genocide, it turns out, and they don't necessarily want to vote for it. And Kamala Harris learned that the hard way. AIPAC is learning it too. One of the best ways to fight AIPAC is to stop buying into the mythology around it. It is not the unbeatable behemoth. And again, you can look up, do a Google search for my name and AIPAC. You'll find a bunch of articles that I've written about the Israel lobby. I don't agree with people who say it's not a factor. You know, I think Noam Chomsky has done a lot of that. I disagreed with him. I disagreed. We actually had a debate over email years ago about this directly. It is certainly a factor in certain ways. It is not the giant controlling thing that people think it is. The United States' Israel policy and Israel politics are based on our own imperial concerns, are based on our own racist assumptions about Arabs and Palestinians, are based on our interests above all else. And they have been from the very beginning. And that's one of the reasons that AIPAC is powerful. It's not that they create those interests, it's that those interests give AIPAC power. So all of this is to say, we can counter that. We have been countering it. AIPAC's power is very much diminished because of groups like Jewish Voice for Peace, because of groups like American Muslims for Palestine, because of groups, even I'd go so far as to say, as strange as this to say, is J Street. You know, they are very weak on these issues and all that, but they still have helped to diminish the influence of AIPAC. That's been important. And it will continue to diminish, and they will continue to have to pump more and more money just to knock out a congressperson in one little district. So that's a good thing. They're not the behemoth they were, and we need to keep that in mind as we're working.
Mitchell, thank you so much. I want to give you the chance if you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to leave us with. You know.
So yeah, I mean, again, I can only reinforce, you know, we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and it's not, you know, one of the I want to go back to something I said earlier. People who were guilting other people because they were going to vote for Jill Stein, or they were going to vote for Cornel West, or they weren't going to vote for the president at all. Those people are the people that need to stop and look and say, we need to not do that anymore. Okay, because that is what discourages people from being involved. That is what discourages people from making change. And it's what discourages people from even just changing their minds on the issue, because you're trying to bully people into changing their vote. That's what we need to stop doing. We need to start thinking about how we work together and how we work through differences. Okay, you want to have the conversation about why voting third party is a bad idea. You should vote for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump to defeat Donald Trump. Fine, have that conversation. While you're having that conversation, work on something. Okay, work on something and work on it together. That's what we need to do that, and we need to do it now. We cannot keep working in our various little isolated bubbles. We have to come together. Because guess what? You know, take a look at MAGA. They're a lot fewer than us, but they do work together. Actually, they do come together, and they do also, by the way, work through differences. Is something that people don't realize. we need and we need to listen to what American working people are saying and make that part of our progressive movements, because Bernie Sanders is right. Democrats have abandoned the working class, and until that changes, it's going to be real hard for progressives to get votes in these elections. The last thing I'll say, again, you can follow my work on Substack. Just look for Mitchell Plitnick Substack. And uh, to the organizers of this, I really want to thank everybody. And those of you who are in the Ohio area, please join up with JVP in Central Ohio. If you're somewhere else around the country, there's probably a JVP chapter or pod near you. There's a lot of good work happening. Join us and help us to change what we're all confronted with right now, be that Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, because they're all not on our side. And we have to create an our side that we can support.
Thank you so much, Mitchell.
Thank you. Oh, last thing is also, feel free to go to rethinkingforeignpolicy.org, and you can contact me through there if you have questions that didn't get asked here or just want to give me some feedback. I'd like to hear it. Okay. Sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're so grateful to you and to Khalid. And thank you everyone for coming. And we'll have this, we're recording, so we'll have this available at some point as well. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.